I'm halfway through my second NTA convention, and although I'm still learning a lot of new things about this organization and the huge scope of NTA, I think I'm about to learn an awful lot more. You guys talk about to, from, and within North America. That's kind of a phrase that seems to be ingrained in the message and the minds of NTA members. And the scope of that mission is kind of what we're going to talk about today. Really the embodiment of that mission is what we have here today, to, from, and within North America. We have 4 leaders from the 4 different countries or regions of North America, but these all have a common goal of that to, from, and within. And we're going to have a little, like a panel discussion. I've got some questions for them, and they can interrupt each other, and we're going to see what comes from this. I don't think anything like this, certainly on this scope, with this level of authority, has really ever been done, so it should be pretty interesting. So first and foremost, we have from Mexico, Mr. Ricardo Anaya. He's the Undersecretary of Tourism Planning from Mexico. You'll be right here.
Thank you very much.
We also have representing the Caribbean, Mr. Hugh Riley, Secretary General, Caribbean Tourism Organization. See, these are bigwigs. These are important people. From Canada, Mr. Pierre Santoni, Senior Director, Via Rail Canada, and he's a member of the Canadian Tourism Commission Advisory Board, right? That's right. And last but not least, from right here in the United States of America, Ms. Isabel Hill, Acting Director, United States Office of Travel and Tourism. You can all have a seat. So, having a good time?
Very good time.
Vegas. Of course we're having a good time.
Were you at the party last night?
I was.
You were at the party last night.
But I'm not allowed to tell what happened there. This is Vegas.
That's right, good. Well, thank you. 1 down, 2,000 to go for my reputation. We're going to start with you, if that's okay, Mr. Anaya.
Sure.
What is your strategy to attract visitors from other parts of North America? What are the opportunities that you see, and what are some of the challenges in that?
Yes, in Mexico, we've learned that we need to stop taking this great industry for granted. This industry, travel and tourism, creates more jobs and more wealth worldwide than the automobile industry. And in many, many countries, doesn't get a quarter of the attention that that other industry gets. So we believe that the government has to be proactive in making it easier for tourists to come inside the country. Let me give you 2 very specific examples. We said, well, if you have an American visa, you've been pretty well scanned. So if you have an American visa, you're welcome to come to Mexico. We did that on May 2010. 50% of all Brazilians that have come into Mexico since then came in with an American visa. Brazilian tourists to Mexico are up 60% compared to last year. That's what happens when you simply facilitate. Russian travelers, instead of having to issue a visa, now you just go online, give some information, print a receipt, and you're welcome to come to Mexico. 40% of all Russians from May 2010 have come into Mexico with that facility. And Russian tourists to Mexico are up 59%.
Wow.
And the second thing is diversification. We are a country with 62 ethnic groups, with their own language, with their own culture, their own traditions. We're much more than just great sun and beach destinations. We're a country with 3,000 years of history, more than 40,000 archaeological sites, millenary cultures like the Aztecs, the Mayas. By the way, 2012 is a very important year in the Mayan culture because, as you know,
the world's ending.
The long count of the calendar.
Oh, that's not it.
No, exactly. The long count of the Mayan calendar
It's actually very
is
important
coming
for the
to
whole
an
world.
end. Is coming to an end on the 21st of December.
Right.
Some people, like you,
I was having a good time until he brought up the end of the world.
Some people actually believe it's the end of the world. The Mayas believe it's a new era of
good.
prosperity, of happiness. And I was reading yesterday that it's much more likely for you to live this new era of happiness and prosperity if you visit Mexico on 2012.
On that, no, this is completely unrelated. I was thinking of doing a story about a guy who's selling like condos in an old missile silo in Kansas somewhere. And he's having a hard time because, you know, the end of the world and everything that's going wrong. Because he's got 6 of these things. They're like a couple $1 million each. He sold 2. So now he's thinking of maybe trying to just sell them as like a senior getaway. Like you might go there like as a retirement kind of thing. And not having much luck at all. So I'm hoping you're right, that this is just nothing more than just a sign that we should all go to Mexico and not the end of the world. That would be much better, much better. Does anybody have anything they want to add? Not on what I said, but on what he said?
Well, I think, though, that, I mean, in all fairness, I think a lot of what Ricardo said relates to many of us. I mean, we are here to try and facilitate travel. So there'll always be national security concerns and so on. But the good thing is that we are in such an incredible business. No matter what happens, travel survives. People accuse our industry of being fickle. It's not fickle. It's vulnerable to all kinds of circumstances, but it is extremely resilient. It always comes back. And the good thing is that people around North America, and perhaps in other parts of the world as well, have started to realize that travel is a right. So they figure no matter what happens, nobody is going to prevent them. They've worked hard for their money, and by golly, they are going to travel. And that's a great thing. And I think that one of the challenges that we all have, though, is to make sure that we get this balance right between telling people the truth about what's really going on, because things will go wrong, but there's a very fine balance between that and scaring the bejesus out of them. We have to make sure that we do not terrify people into staying in their homes. Let them travel. We'll facilitate the way that they can travel to our countries. We're trying to do that into and within the Caribbean. Mexico has done it in a way that I think makes all the sense in the world. We'd like to do it in the Caribbean as well. We have done that to some extent, but of course in our particular case, the CTO represents 33 nations, some of which are independent sovereign nations and some are not. Some don't make those kinds of decisions on their own. So national security issues get dealt with on another continent in some cases within our membership group. But generally speaking, I think we can all agree that the more we can make it easy for our clients and their friends and the people within their sphere of influence to come on down, the more our industry is going to thrive and the more profitable we all will be.
Thank you. How about the next question to you, Mr. Santoni, if you don't mind? How can all the destinations in North America work together? Can they work together?
I think they can work together. I think the concept that we can sell North America as a destination, I don't think that's going to work. Excuse me. I think each country individually is too big. Each country individually has enough to occupy anyone's time for 2, 3, or 4 weeks easily. And I think what we're competing against is Asia. People say I'm going to Asia. They mean I'm going to Japan or I'm going to China. People say I'm going to Europe. It means they're going to France. You know, a train across Canada will take 6 days. That will take you back and forth across Europe 7 or 8 times. I think the Australians understand North America very well right now, and we're doing well with Australia, A, because their dollar's doing very well, but also Australia is as big as our 3 countries, or our 4 areas. So they understand the scope. They understand that you need to come for more than a week. You need to come for 2 or 3 weeks if you want to experience more than 1 or 2 cities in North America. So, you know, can we work together? Yes, I think we already do. I think we are trying to get ourselves promoted through the DMOs and through our partners throughout either Mexico or the United States in our case. And I think that is the only way we can afford to participate in trying to promote ourselves as part of North America. I think where the passengers want to go, regardless of what we decide to package, the passengers are going to go too. So whether or not I want people to land in Vancouver and go to Halifax is kind of irrelevant, because we know they're landing in Los Angeles, they're flying to New York, they're going to Niagara Falls, then they're flying to Vancouver. So people will find what they want to do, and now with the internet, they're finding out a lot faster what is cool. They're finding out a lot faster what works. They're finding out which airline connections work better for them, which hotels are better situated. I think the issue we have in North America as a group is that we spend too much time individually advertising our own product, our own hotel, our own village, our own city, our own pizza shop in here. I think people in North America need to concentrate more on the product that they're offering, and they need to put more money into the product. I think that's a really big issue, because everywhere around the world, governments are putting money into product, and that's what we're competing against. And I think that's going to be a bigger issue down the road.
I would say that the perspective from the United States is a little bit different, because we have not had an international travel promotion program up until now. So for us, I think the perspective is that
We've been telling them to stay away, right?
Not
You're a terrorist, don't come to our country.
not a bit of it. The United States leads the world in revenues from travel and tourism. Don't
Okay.
kid yourself. We are a great nation, and there is so much to see and do here. There is so much diversity. And this is what people want when they travel. They want lots to see and do. They don't want to just go and do one thing. They want to know that they can come and see a city like Las Vegas and then go out and see the Grand Canyon. That kind of activity is quite unique, actually, in much of North America. You don't have to go clear across the country to see that incredible natural beauty, as well as have this amazing urban experience. And we now have the Corporation for Travel Promotion, which is now doing business as Brand USA, which has launched its platform at the World Travel Market and will be launching the entire US promotion program at ITB in Berlin. So for us, we look forward to working with our neighbors in attracting people to North America by doing more marketing and letting people know of all of the experiences that all of the people in this audience have on offer. So.
And that's my point, is that exactly, that's who should be doing the major promotion. It should be the governments, it should be the DMOs that are doing most of the talking. That's the voice that's been missing from the United States, as opposed to hearing from every state and every town, which is what you see when you go to ITB or WTM. I think that is confusing, because other countries don't talk to the public that way. Greece doesn't, Turkey doesn't, and those countries are doing relatively well. Now, their dollars are low, and they have that advantage. It helps.
That's a good point, though. I didn't know a lot of that.
We think it's going to make a significant difference in the marketplace.
All right. How about we address the next question to you, Hugh? What barriers do we have in North America that are currently limiting our market share? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of the things, certainly in the Caribbean, that's limiting our market share, there are several, but one is budget. Somebody's always going to have more money to create a bigger facility, a taller water slide, a bigger hotel, and so on. But there are ways of dealing with that. First of all, it goes back to what we do to fix the experience. We in the Caribbean, just like all of us in this room, have a responsibility to do some things to overcome that challenge of service. We have to offer service that is so superb. We in the Caribbean have started to create something called TVS, Total Visitor Satisfaction. It's a long, long story, and I'll shorten it for you. It is an index that we have created to measure the way that our destinations are doing in terms of delivering visitor satisfaction. So we're really saying to consumers, to the travel trade, to the whole world, that we are paying attention to the quality of the experience that we deliver to our visitors. We think that everybody should do this. And by the way, those who assess how we do are the visitors themselves. Let's not kid ourselves. They're doing it now. They're doing it on the internet. They're doing it in social media. But we're saying, here are some specific criteria that you think are important to you. Tell us how we're doing against that, and it will help us to improve. So one of the challenges that we have, though, is to make sure that that message permeates all the way down. I mean, somebody's always going to be somewhere along the delivery chain. They'll have the capability of ruining whatever the image is that you create overseas. But one of the challenges that we have is to make sure it's all easier said than done, but to make sure that everyone is singing from the same hymnal as far as that's concerned. There's always going to be someone with a bigger budget, but no one should care more than those of us who are in the hospitality industry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add that another limitation is perception in our case. There is a tremendous gap between perception and reality. Our numbers this year are up. We have one of the highest market share regarding American tourists to Mexico, according to the Department of Commerce figures, almost 19%. That means 2 out of 10 Americans that fly out of the United States go to Mexico. Canadian travelers to Mexico are up 7%. That means 80,000 more Canadians than last year. But perception says something different. That's why we're working in many projects to put things in place to reduce the distance between reality and perception.
What do you think? When you say perception, what are you referring to?
Security issues.
Security. Okay.
Security issues. Those that have been in Mexico have had a great time. I live there. I've never had a problem. 98% of all visitors to Mexico say they would recommend the place to family and visitors and would like to come back. That's why we launched a very robust campaign, the Taxi Project. I don't know if some of you have heard of it. It's Americans and Canadians coming back from Mexico, once in American soil, with a hidden camera inside the taxi cab, asking them how was their experience in Mexico. And we've had extraordinary, spontaneous responses. People are very happy, recommending Mexico. They don't even mention security issues because it doesn't even come to their mind. It's a not issue, exactly. So we're going to continue working on this. We know that it's a limitation, but I think we're doing good and that we can get these things in place.
Where does that come from, just out of curiosity, this perception? Is that the news media's fault? Or?
There's, I would say, 2 things. There's something happening. The government is strongly fighting the drug cartels. We're a very big country.
We have 2,000. Hear a story about what's happening at the border, and they extrapolate that to the whole country.
We have 2,500 municipalities. Violence issues are concentrated in very, very specific pockets of the country, about 80 of those municipalities. That's less than 5% of the territory. The distance between an issue happening in the border with the United States and Cancun is about 1,200 miles. That's the distance between Houston and New York. You're not going to stop going to New York because there was an incident in Houston. So we think that we do have to work on.
And that's an issue for everybody except Canada, where nothing bad ever happens.
Well, that's true. Thank you. Well,
I'll tell you.
I'll tell you, SARS.
Oh,
We got hammered for SARS very
right.
badly, and the impact on that lasted 5 or 6 years. We didn't start the SARS; we just dealt with it.
Right. I forgot
But
about that.
I'm more excited to be sitting here with him because he has not mentioned that we imposed visa restrictions on Mexicans back in 2009 and lost 80% of our travelers from Mexico into Canada. I was hoping he'd beat me up on that so we could play with it a bit.
You fixed it?
It's being fixed as we speak.
Fixed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a similar problem with perception, and ours is around the border. And I think we hear a great deal about the challenges that people have getting visas in particular. And it is true that the government has challenges keeping up with the great demand for visas because people want to come to the United States. And we hear a lot of this.
Are you launching into my 4th question already?
No, I'm not. That's a different
all right,
question.
all right.
Not that I know what it is, but but the subject of visas, for example, what we don't hear is that since 2005 in Brazil, which is often cited as a huge problem, visa issuance is up 234%. In China, visa issuances is up 136% in that same period. They're on track to be 40 and 30% more even this year than last year. And so what we do here is that, yes, there is a problem, but what we don't hear is I would defy any business here to be able to manage that kind of growth. So we have to look at the question, I think, in a 360-degree perception and to say, well, why are we having the problem? It's not because people don't want to come here, it's because people do. And we're working very hard, the United States government and the men and women in the Department of State have expanded capacity. They are working on extending hours. They are doing everything in their power to bring the visitors here that you all want. But you don't hear that story very often. And I think part of it is that the media, you know, if there is a concern, for example, that people have with their government, they often will say, well, here's the worst case and it has to be fixed, which is absolutely fine and appropriate. There was a time when you could direct your communications to a certain channel. Oh, well, this communication was intended for my policymakers. Unfortunately, that communication is sent around the world. So I think that the industry itself needs to be aware of all of the progress that is being made and to also, you know, communicate how much better it is. So I hope that people here will take it upon themselves to become, you know, more informed, because everybody here is part of the message. And I think that's true with Mexico. I think that's true with Canada. We all are in this together, and we all need to be developing a greater understanding of what the realities versus the perceptions.
Let me, if I could just add something to that. I mean, I agree with Isabel 100%. We have to tell our own story. The media, with the greatest respect, needs drama. The media thrives on letting people know the more dramatic. That's fine. It's the truth. If it's the truth, and however you embellish it, that's fine. But how often do we? How often do we show the other side of the coin? So things are going to go wrong. No question about that. Man-made disasters and natural disasters. How often, though, do we as the destinations then go back in with the camera, our own camera, and show people, children cavorting on the beach, people really having a good time, people, not actors, just ma and pa, Mr. and Mrs. Sheboygan, just having a very good time doing things that tourists do. We forget that part. So the only image that's long-lasting, that stays imprinted on people's minds, is the image of the disaster. It's our responsibility to tell our own story, tell it factually and truthfully, but make sure it gets told.
Well, and yeah. And it would be nice if the news media did too, you know, went back in after the disaster and say, you know, look, it's a different world. I think people still in their mind think that, you know, a lot of these places where we've seen death and destruction still looks just like it did last time they saw the last news report. And we're not very good at those follow-ups because we're on to the next big disaster, you know. Not me specifically, I cover the good news, but some of my colleagues.
Does a good job.
Yeah. Well, let me get on to my fourth question, which you probably know is already coming because you were digging through my briefcase, which you really shouldn't have done that. But so what is the United States of America, or if anybody wants to interject, doing to make it easier for other visitors from within North America to visit in terms of documentation, visas, border crossings, entry procedures, all those kinds of things?
Steve and I talked about this before the event because it's something near and dear to his heart, and so you know, I think that there is actually very good news on this front. On the southern border of the United States, President Calderon and President Obama announced an initiative for the southern border, the 21st century border, and there is an executive steering committee that is working diligently to look at all of the issues of infrastructure and how to facilitate free trade and travel for legitimate travelers across the border. So there is a very concerted effort, and it is based on the principle of shared responsibility. And similarly, we are working, President Obama and Prime Minister Harper are working on the northern border, similarly on a shared vision for the Canadian-US border called Beyond the Border. And in fact, they are making an announcement today that I think will be extremely uplifting for this entire group, that addresses how exactly we're going to be doing a far better job moving into the 21st century on both of our borders. But the initiative that the President and Prime Minister are announcing, I think, actually at this very moment, so I'm not
Do you know
allowed-
what it is?
I know some of it, but I'm
Why
not
don't
allowed to
you- why
get
don't
out
you
in front of
announce
our
it here?
president.
The president won't mind. You break
Not
the
a
news.
bit of it, not a bit of it. But I will say that I think that it is, you will find that it is very specific and it addresses the concerns. And I think that that what I would sort of like to say is that I think the NTA and this industry has done a really good job in helping your governments understand your challenges. And I think that's really, really important. And I think you all also need to take great heart that you are being heard and that these governments are collaborating and working really hard together to solve these problems, not just for today, not just short-term Band-Aids, but to look at how we re-engineer these processes moving forward so that we can have the kind of shared vision that I think and shared experience that we and our visitors would like to have.
The news person in me is going to take over here for just 1 second. When you say everybody's going to be happy at this announcement, what is it about the announcement that's going to make everybody happy?
Good news.
Let me Google.
Because it could have been.
Because I'm not sure they
It's
have
that
announced
close.
it yet. It is literally happening as we speak.
So don't make the announcement. Just tell us why we'll.
Well, you're going to be happy because they have heard the concern. They are looking at ways of facilitating travelers at the border, of looking at the kinds of issues that we've all been talking about, and the kind of issues you ask about. What are the procedures? What are the documentation? How can we streamline the process? How can we take shared responsibilities for making better use of the resources? How can we push the screening process beyond the border, outside of just that area? We have also trusted traveler programs that we're working on separately, which should also play into this. Global Entry, Nexus, the process that we were talking about before, involves an entirely different view of security, and that is not looking at everybody as if they are the problem or a potential problem, but taking aside and identifying what is called trusted or frequent travelers that we have information about, and looking at how we can facilitate those processes so that the resources that we have, rather than constantly trying to find ways of expanding resources at a time when we have none no expansion possible, to target them and to let them use their time more effectively. And one thing I can say is that on the trusted travel programs, such as Global Entry, the travel and tourism industry, the partnerships that we have are what are making things better, because American Express sent out free global entry opportunities for all of their, I think it was Platinum Card members. Delta, everybody is reaching out into their frequent traveler programs and inviting them to become part of this, which is great. And you all, may I suggest that you join the Global Entry program? Because that way you just go right across the borders, and again, the resources can be used appropriately. So I think that the message I'm trying to give is that the solution to these problems are shared. They are shared amongst our government, but they are also shared with our industry. And I think that those kinds of partnerships and the sense of shared responsibility is what is going to push us into the future to work more collaboratively and to more effectively to make all of this this travel facilitation happen the way we all envision it. It's a process and not an event. So today's an event is a big step in that process.
Okay, good. I think we need to change. You can go ahead. You were talking about it being my pet peeve. My pet peeve is that I think we treat a lot of people outside the United States as like you're assumed a terrorist unless, and I was only half joking about that earlier, until you prove to us otherwise.
Right.
And we just make it way too difficult for
Well,
people to get
I
into
will
this
say
country.
I don't work at the Department of Homeland Security, but I will say that there are a couple of points that we do need to keep in mind. Number one, safety and security is paramount. We need to ensure the safety of all of our travelers and all of your customers, and we do need to ensure our national security. And the question is, how do we do that most effectively? And I think that it is a learning process, and it is a huge culture change, because the people that are at all of our borders are security people. And so we are working, again, with the private sector. Some of our hotels have stepped up to look at how to train them in customer service. We are introducing customer service surveys. Additionally, the theme parks came to look at how do we do a better job of line management so that actually you may not stay any shorter in line, but the perception is that it's actually been much more entertaining. And again, it's a partnership because the airports and the private sector have come in to work together to make the experience a better experience. From the time you get your visa to the time you come off the plane, go through the process and come out. It's ongoing, and I think that that collaboration is a continual improvement process that we should all be committed to.
And I think that, if I may add, that also speaks to the experience. I mean, I keep going back to this whole business of making sure that the experience that we give to your clients, our visitors, is superb. You see, the policymakers, first of all, I know we're all grateful to Lisa Simon and Steve Richard and the NTA for giving us the opportunity to talk about this and to talk about what the policymakers are doing and so on. But we have to make sure that that gets filtered down to everyone, to the frontline people as well, so that they know that our countries are trying to facilitate this business of tourism, so that it's not for them to block it. We want to make sure that they understand that they too are in the hospitality industry like the rest of us are, and they treat people that way. They must remember that bad attitude doesn't mean better security. You know? Okay.
That's great. That's a good note to end on. Can I have one more round of applause? I think our panel's been tremendous, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate it.